On today's episode of Sci-Fi Classic Reviews, I'm going back to the Planet of the Apes, one of the greatest and most enduring science fiction film franchises of all time. For those of you concerned I'm going to repeat my less than glowing review of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, let me quickly spoil my opinion of today's movie right here and now. I love Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and I'm not just saying that to make up for my last POTA review. Roddy McDowall returns as Cornelius, the satire is at its cheekiest, the guy from Colossus plays the villain, and I get to nitpick some brand new time travel shenanigans. What's not to love?
From the windows of the spaceship,
we saw the Earth destroyed.
Colonel Taylor's craft has returned from outer space, but rather than carrying the astronaut and his team back from their mission to the stars, what emerges from the exploratory capsule are Cornelius and Zira, humanoid apes from a doomed future. As they attain celebrity status with the public, behind the scenes, dark concerns about these intelligent creatures sets in motion a violent response. As Cornelius, Zira, and their new baby boy flee captivity, the United States government is hot on their trail, guns at the ready.
Four months after the release of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, producer Arthur P. Jacobs and his colleagues at 20th Century Fox were eager for another lucrative sequel. Even though the previous film had ended with the destruction of the Earth itself, Jacobs sent word to writer Paul Dane, quote, "Apes exist, sequel required," unquote. Dane was tasked not only with coming up with a way to continue the story, but also to reduce the cost of filming. Therefore, he utilized the convenient plot device of time travel to put a trio of apes into a 1970s human world.
Address, please. The zoo.
Consulting with the original novel's writer, Pierre Boulle, Dane came up with a more personal story with room for comedic satire, originally called Secret of the Planet of the Apes. After considering the likes of Gordon Douglas, Noel Black, and even Gene Kelly, the director's chair ultimately was given to actor-turned-director Don Taylor. Taylor, whose name is just a happy coincidence, was interested in the film because it felt more like a love story than a sci-fi picture. Thus, on a budget of between $2 and $2.5 million, only slightly less than Beneath, he began work on what would eventually be called Escape from the Planet of the Apes. This time around, Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter both reprised their roles as Cornelius and Zira, respectively.
Does the other one talk?
Only when she lets me.
While Natalie Trundy returns as the new character Dr. Stevie Branton. Trundy, who plays a mutant in Beneath the Planet of the Apes and an ape in the following two films, also happened to be the producer's wife at the time. Meanwhile, the third ape in this movie, the ill-fated Dr. Milo, is played by Sal Mineo, who reportedly hated acting under all the ape makeup.
Do you understand? We will not hurt you.
poor Dr. Milo.
The primary villain, Dr. Otto Hasslein, is played by Eric Braeden, fresh off his starring role in Colossus: The FORBIN Project. If you haven't seen my retrospective on that film, you should check it out after this video. It's one of my more popular reviews. Anyway, I do like Braeden as an actor and think he does a good job with what he's given. But I'll have a lot more to say about his character and his portrayal a little bit later. For the small but critical role of the United States President, producer Arthur P. Jacobs wanted to cast Henry Fonda, but director Don Taylor fought against that, not wanting to cast someone that would distract from the rest of the cast. Eventually, Taylor won out, and the role of the president went to character actor William Wyndham, who fans of this channel might recognize as Commodore Decker from the original Star Trek episode The Doomsday Machine. Other notable actors include Bradford Dillman as the kind-hearted Dr. Lewis Dixon, the great Ricardo Montalban as the circus owner Armando.
You are asking me to risk imprisonment for the sake of two fugitive apes? Well, the answer is 1,000 times yes.
Blade Runner's M. Emmett Walsh as a character only named Aid, and the brain that wouldn't die's Jason Evers as one of the two unnamed interrogators. Filming took place on a tight 6-week schedule starting on November 30th, 1970. Since the script was deliberately set in Los Angeles to save money, that's where the shooting was centered, featuring such locations as the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, the LA Zoo, the LA County Museum of Natural History, the Malibu Coast, and the San Pedro Shipyard. Reportedly, an opening sequence in which the 3 aponauts witness the destruction of the Earth before being sucked into a time vortex was filmed, but for whatever reason was cut from the film. The music was once again composed by Jerry Goldsmith, who used the opportunity to incorporate more contemporary musical styles, or at least contemporary to the early 1970s, and that does add to the film's more relaxed tone. I have to admit, though, that it also helps make the movie feel a little more dated than its predecessors. Escape from the Planet of the Apes released on May 26, 1971, to mostly positive critical reviews that felt it made for a better sequel than the previous entry in the series, largely because of its humor and character work.
Well, why doesn't she take it? Because I loathe bananas.
The film also did well at the box office, grossing $12.3 million in its initial domestic run, which was less than Beneath had made, but still about 5 times its budget, ensuring that there would be another inevitable sequel, which the filmmakers had bravely left room for in the final scene.
Mama.
However, just like Beneath the Planet of the Apes, it hasn't yet been used as inspiration for any future versions of the saga, whereas the other 3 films in the original series have. Maybe that's just because this entry is uniquely of its time, or maybe they just haven't gotten around to it yet. And now it's time for
Tug Nitpicks Time Travel.
Let's talk about our antagonist, shall we? Dr. Hassline, when introducing the idea of time travel, says he believes in the many worlds interpretation, the concept of multiple branching timelines coexisting. He equates it to different lanes on a temporal highway. According to that logic, as soon as the apes traveled back in time from the future, they entered a brand new, non-deterministic timeline. Keep this in mind, because Hassline then proceeds to act as though Zira and Cornelius have come from the future to create a time loop, that their very existence will create the future they come from. He believes in this so firmly that he decides they have to die.
Now they've killed. And for that they must be killed. It has to be done, and done quickly. Before we start a stone rolling, they'll gather enough poison moss to kill us all.
It's his primary motivation, but it doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about it for a few seconds. If multiple timelines are in play, then nothing is inevitable and he can rest easy without having to contemplate cold-blooded murder. But if time is a closed loop, then trying to eliminate the ape interlopers is an exercise in futility. Either way, his decision to go homicidal is irrational, and if he is the foremost expert on time as he claims to be, then you'd think he'd have thought things through a little better. Now, judging by the events of the next movie, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, it seems as though the writers couldn't decide whether time is set in this universe or not either, because clearly, apes begin evolving without needing to be birthed from Caesar or his ancestors, but Caesar is nevertheless integral in causing the ape uprising. Granted, conquest accelerates the timeline of events as given to us by Cornelius in Escape, but that can be chalked up to a 2,000-year-old game of telephone. Still, from a writing perspective, I get why Hasline acts the way he does. I know that in order to make the plot happen, he must turn against the apes because he believes he's saving future humanity. There are ways to do that without contradicting takes on time travel, though. For example, he could believe that time is a loop, but then becomes so scared of the future that he wants to fight against it, clinging to hope even if he knows it's futile. This could also make him a more relatable bad guy, which is what I think they were going for. Unfortunately, the way he's written and the way Eric Braeden plays him is far too mustache-twirlingly evil for that to work. Nitpicks aside though, and yes, those are just nitpicks really, the idea to invert the fish-out-of-water dynamic of the original film is a good one, which makes it possible to show things like the Human Presidential Commission acting only slightly less cruel than the orangutan tribunal that sentenced Taylor to death. The character, not the director. It also lends itself to a more comedic satire of 1970s American culture.
How is that?
Soothing. Very wet.
Even while tackling heavy subject matter. While Escape is unquestionably the most lighthearted film in the entire franchise, it's still a Planet of the Apes film, so even when it's at its silliest, there's a sense of dread lingering behind every gag that presages a typically brutal conclusion. It also sticks true to what the franchise has always been about, which is the stupidity of violence.
You maniac! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! Man is evil, capable of nothing but destruction. Do you think this riot will win freedom for all your kind? By tomorrow it will be too late!
It's easy to get it confused, to wonder whether you're supposed to be rooting for or against the future we've seen in the previous movies. But when you root for Zira and Cornelius here, assuming you're not a psychopath like Dr. Hasline, you're not rooting against humanity. You're simply hoping for an end to the cycle of violence. Which, in true Planet of the Apes fashion, proves inevitable. That may make these movies feel a bit bleak and fatalistic, but it's also what makes them so hauntingly unforgettable. Therefore, Escape from the Planet of the Apes belongs on the same pedestal as the rest. Yes, that begrudgingly includes Even Beneath, meaning it is absolutely a sci-fi classic. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What do you think about Escape from the Planet of the Apes? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll try to outrun the Snake Man, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
My lawfully wedded spouse.
Wedded? We'll take that up later, Your Eminence.